Hello everybody, my name is Dee and welcome to Books and Quirks. Today I'm doing another Friday Reads. Again, it's been a while, but I've read a few books in the past couple of weeks and I'm currently in the middle of like 3 books. So I'll just start telling you about it. It's a little bit dark in here, so I hope the filming's okay. There's shadows everywhere because it's so cloudy out, but I have the light on, so hopefully that fixes it. But anyway, I hope you're all having a good day so far. Happy Friday, and I hope that you all have a wonderful weekend ahead. So let me just get started into what I've finished recently. The first book that I finished, I've had on my shelf for like 2 years, and I haven't read it yet, but I finally picked it up, and it was a super quick read, and I really enjoyed it, and that was The Silver Music Box by Mina Bates. This is actually a German novel translated. It was translated by Alison Leyland, and this was so good. So this is a historical fiction novel. Most of the book takes place in the past, around the time of, during in Germany during the 1930s and 40s, and the last like third of the book, maybe fourth of the book, takes place in present times. So this follows a family, a Jewish family, who lived in Germany. It starts out in 1914. It follows a boy named Paul when he was very, very young, and it gradually moves as he gets older. And the majority of the book takes place between 1929 and like 1941. And so obviously we all know what happened during that time period for Jewish families living in Germany. The Nazi Party was starting to form and gain power, I guess, and Hitler was starting to gain power, and eventually, the Jewish population was forced. They were abused and then eventually forced to go into concentration camps. So this follows that family as they struggle during that time period, and it follows, it all kind of surrounds this music box that Paul's father made for him when he was a little boy, and he's kind of passing it down to generations. And it was just so good, so gripping, so awful as well. My heart breaks for these characters, the things they were going through, but it also takes place the last part in the present time, where we find a woman who finds the music box and is trying to find out more about it, and it could possibly be connected to her heritage, because she was adopted when she was a young girl. So I really loved this. There is a second novel. This kind of tied up pretty neatly, but there is a second novel that's kind of a companion novel to this. I forget the title of it, but I'm definitely going to pick it up because I love this author. And I think it's a testament not only to the author, but the translator as well, because if the translator's not good, the book's not going to be good or make sense. This was excellent, and I really, really enjoyed it. If you enjoy historical fiction, World War II type fiction, I think this would be a good fit for you. The next book series that I finished, and I mentioned this in my last video, I think I had just started at that time, was the full trilogy of Snow Like Ashes. I don't know what the name of this trilogy is. I just call it by the first book's name. So this is the first book, Snow Like Ashes. The second book is Ice Like Fire, and the third book I think is called Frost Like Night or something like that. I'm not sure of the third book, but I really enjoyed this series. This was such a quick series. It's a YA fantasy series, and it follows a young girl who is trying to reclaim her kingdom that was kind of, decimated by this evil force. It involves a lot of magic. There's a lot of action. The first book had me kind of, on the edge of my seat a little bit. The second book was my least favorite, Ice Like Fire. It was most middle books of series can be like that. It's kind of like a filler a little bit. So the second book did drag, but the first book and the third book were excellent. I really enjoyed this. I read the series in like, a week. I read all three books in like a week. So it was really, I just really enjoyed it. So the first book that I'm started and I'm still reading and I'm probably going to be reading for the next few weeks is Fall of Giants by Ken Follett. I'm currently about 100 pages into this. I'm just reading a little bit at a time every day. And this is quite a chunker. This has like, how many pages? Oh my God, almost 1,000 pages. I'm definitely going to be reading this for like 3 weeks. So this book follows five families in, five families throughout the course of the century, of the 20th century. It starts out in 1914, I think. Oh, it starts out in 1911, and you get to follow these five families. What I read so far for the first 100 pages is really interesting. We followed already like kind of a coal miner's family and what it was like for the dangers and everything coming with coal mining in the early 1900s, and it's really good. It's just very dense. So that's the reason that I think, it's not going to be one of these books that I fly through. And I'm probably going to be mentioning it in my next couple videos because this book is going to take me a while. But I'll be reading Fall of Giants, sorry, by Ken Follett. This weekend I'll be continuing on with this. Another book that I'm currently reading, I just started another buddy read with Cheryl of Sierra Flames Fan, and we are continuing on with our love of Michael J. Sullivan. So he is the author that wrote the Age of Myth series that I talked a lot about, and we're reading his next series called Theft of Swords is the first book. It's at the first volume. It contains 2 books in it, and we're currently on the second book in that volume. And so Theft of Swords, like I said, is by Michael J. Sullivan, and it follows the Age of Myth series. So it's sort of a companion series, but it's like 1,000 years or more than 1,000 years later. So it's really interesting. I'm so glad that I read the Age of Myth series first because we kind of get, snippets. And I think it would be confusing if I hadn't read that series because, it makes everything means so much more when you get, those legends from the past because I was reading those legends in the previous series. So this is really good. I'm really enjoying it. Cheryl and I are just, flying through it. We're reading only 2 chapters a day, but the chapters are pretty long. So we have a couple more days of reading before we finish, or maybe 3 days more of reading before we finish that second book, and then we'll just continue on. Another book that I just recently started, I started it like 2 days ago, was Time's Convert by Deborah Harkness. So I love Deborah Harkness. I bought this book immediately when it came out. Now, it came out like a year ago. I just haven't gotten around to reading it. But I love her All Souls trilogy. It is like one of my all-time favorite trilogies. So I knew I wanted to read this book, and I just finally got around to it, and I'm loving it. I just love her writing. I just find it so fascinating, everything. It's mostly fantasy, but it's also part historical fiction. A lot takes place in the past. So in this series, if you haven't read the All Souls or if you have read the All Souls series by Deborah Harkness, this book follows Marcus. So it follows Marcus, and part of the book takes place in his past when he first became a vampire during the Revolutionary War, so the 1700s, and his his mate Phoebe and her kind of transformation, and also we get more Matthew and Diana in this book. So I just love Deborah Harkness. I will always rave about her. I've spoken about the All Soul series so much. So yeah, I'm just so glad to be back in that world. So that is all I have for you. Those are all of the books that I've read and that I'm currently reading. It's not a whole lot. Work has been keeping me pretty busy, so I don't have as much time except for the weekends, of course, to read. And I am trying to go out a little bit more. I mean, not today because it's all cloudy and gross, but when it's nice out as well, to get some sun. Of course, still staying socially distant from others, but yeah, I need a little sunlight every now and then. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful Friday, a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you all very, very soon.